Hi, it's Lisa. I've been asked to do a quick video on Brushos, what they are, how I use them, and more importantly, how when I've finished a picture, I see a picture within the picture. Now that sounds odd, but it'll all become clear by the end of the video, I promise. So what do we need? We need some paper. It doesn't have to be watercolour. It's expensive. You can use much cheaper options because you're not doing it as a watercolour piece. Kitchen towel, water and cling film, and the Brushos. I advise don't use more than 3 because otherwise you'll just get a brown splodgy mess. Any 3 colours makes brown. So there's 3 main ways of doing this. The first is to spritz the water onto the paper and then lay your Brushos down on top like I just did there. You simply sprinkle them. There's no real control. You just put them wherever you feel they should go. Number 2, use the paper dry, sprinkle your Brushos, and then add water. Now, the more water you add, the denser the covering on the paper will be. If you spray from high above the paper, you'll get spots. If you spray nearer, you'll get splodges. And number 3, cling film. Lay a little bit down, sprinkle it up, spray a bit of water on there and put your Brushos onto that. Now this gives some really interesting patterns to the pictures, which is mainly what I use when I'm looking for a picture within a picture. You can move the paint around, as you can see there, and here's one I made earlier. You can see the really interesting patterns that you get from this technique. I see trees in that. You can see landscapes there look like branches that are close up to me, but hey, that just could be me. So we're moving on. I do another few examples so that you can get the gist of what I'm talking about, and we've got some examples for you to then have a look at to see if we can see anything within the picture that we've made. So I also use these for die cutting. Especially things like flowers, numbers, letters. Gives a beautiful variation in colour and texture onto the cards. I also here use a little bit of salt on there. The bigger the salt, the more it will draw out the ink from the Brushos, and you'll be left with really interesting patterns again. It's just trial and error really. You can do things like flick bleach on there, etc., and that'll give white spots. Water will lift, although Brushos don't tend to lift like a traditional watercolour, but you can get some lift on there. So what I'm doing now is I'm trying to purposefully create a landscape. So I start with the burnt sienna, I go on to sea green and cobalt blue for the sky. Now you can kind of paint it with your fingers underneath to a certain extent, but again you've got no real control. This one I absolutely love. This one had a split. I see a landscape with a hill to the left coming down into the brown rocky foreground and the green trees in the background in the sky. Jamie and Beth saw water, sea, but we'll come back to that. That's one of the ones I use as an example later on. Obviously you don't always get pictures within your pictures. Sometimes it's just patterns and obviously your colour variations that you can use for different backgrounds or die cuts like I said. This one here, the white pieces you see are where the cling film has not made contact with the card. That can be quite interesting, especially if you're using them for backgrounds. Now I see a picture in this one. I see the foot of a gnarly old tree with perhaps some grasses in front and behind. I can imagine some Lavinia fairies dancing around the bottom of there. I suppose really the sky's the limit in what your imagination lets you see within these pictures. I do think they lend themselves to landscapes, seascapes, you know, a lot more. I've seen an animal or two. Again, another landscape there, the green with the gold sun setting in the background. And of course you can stamp on the top of these as well, using your you know, especially silhouette stamps look beautiful on these. This next example is the base layer of a Northern Lights card, which I will be finishing off and making into a card tomorrow probably. So I'll post that when it's done as well. But just use the very, very brights all over the card. This is stunning when it comes out. I love it. Obviously, when you make it up into a card, you'll add the black and the white paint sprinkles, and I'm sure it's going to be very pretty. The intensity of the colours that you can get with the Brushos is just superb. I mean, I love normal watercolours, but I tend to not be able to get them as vibrant as I can with the Brushos. You can get more than one print off each piece of cling film. So you take your first, go back in with a second, mop up with a third, and then I tend to spritz it with water and wipe it clean and use it again, because of course we don't want to be throwing away plastic. We want to be reusing it. We don't want to be putting that in the bin. So I use it time and time and time and time again. Crumple it up, pop it in the box, use it again next time. As I'm all for recycling and reusing, once you've used all of your kitchen roll to wipe that clean, open it back up, let it dry. And for those of you who use napkins, etc. to transfer for cards, you've got another piece there that you can use in the same manner, transferring it with the iron or the saran wrap or however you choose to do it. Here's a few more examples. That's a first and second generation print, first, second and third generation print, first and second, and just some more examples of the fun morning I had making this video. Like I say, you can't always see a picture within the pictures, but there's this one coming up now, which is to me an obvious landscape. Here it is. We've got the greenery up the front, we've got bush or tree shapes in the mid ground, and then in the sky you've got a setting sun. Again, this is the one I showed you earlier. I tried to recreate this, and just to illustrate the point that you don't really have that much control over Brushos. I did 3 stripes of colour exactly the same as I did on the first time. Burnt sienna for the ground, sea green for the sea, and cobalt blue for the sky. Give it a good old smooshing, as you can see, and it turned out like that, which is more like an underwater scene, I think. So this one I left the cling film too liney, and neither of them turned out like the first one. So it just goes to show that you can be as careful as you can, use exactly the same colours, and you always get a different result. So I went with this picture here to illustrate how I draw a picture from a picture. So can you see anything here? When I looked at it, I saw a tree, a stream, some bushes. Now, let me just start by saying, as you can see here, I am no Rolf Harris. Can you tell what it is yet? But I love doing it. I love just playing loosely with the fine liner on top of the colours. I stick them in my art journals. They're just for fun. But I think by the end, this one turned out okay. It's all about the art, people. Did anyone else see that picture before I pointed it out? Now, Beth said she could see a big purple fox looking out in the middle. Rewind the picture to where I first showed you and see what you can see. Let me know in the comments. Jan, watch me cleverly trimming my printed pieces of paper. These are just a few of the die cuts I've used on some of the background papers I made this morning. These leaves I absolutely love. You can get some really great autumny Thanksgiving cards out of those. Yeah, and just not forgetting Christmas and our new Christmas chat. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. 10 minutes of your life you're never getting back. Any questions, let me know. Bye.